I cried my eyes out. I was so defeated and depressed, and the consultant just ripped him to shreds. When I was 24, I did something that so many people thought I was absolutely crazy for doing, and something that most medical students or doctors would not have done if they were in my position. And that thing was I left my career as a doctor and I left medicine, but I did it at a very awkward and strange time. Since I was the age of 12, I remember wanting to be a doctor, and I remember working my butt off to try and get into med school. And then when I was 18, I got an offer from Manchester Medical School. And if you're not aware, in the UK, they do this really weird thing where they give you a conditional offer for a uni place. They say, if you get 3 A's in your exams, then we will accept you into our medical school. For me personally, and I'm sure for so many other people, it caused me so much unnecessary pain to have to go through that. So I had the offer, it was hard enough to get the offer. I took my exam and I kid you not, half a mark away from getting an A in one of my chemistry exams. And they didn't accept me. I was in Iraq at the time visiting family, and I just remember crying my eyes out, calling them, begging them, like, come on, it's half a mark. Let me into the medical school. I already did 2 hours worth of interviews. I did so many months worth of work experience and years of hard work. They didn't allow me. They didn't accept me into the medical school. So I cried my eyes out. I was so defeated and depressed. Like, imagine working so many years for something and being half a mark away from it. Well, anyway, I decided not to let that stop me, because at this time I was still determined that med school and being a doctor was my calling. I took a year out and I retook that chemistry exam and I reapplied to Liverpool Medical School. I got accepted into Liverpool Medical School, and then I had to retake that exam, which I lost half a mark on, and lo and behold, I got nearly full marks on that retake. What's even more annoying about it was that if I had gone to Manchester Medical School, I would have paid only £3,000 per year in school fees. But since I had to wait a year, I went to Liverpool and paid £9,000, which meant that my student loans tripled what they should have actually been. Anyway, so I get into Liverpool Medical School and I start university in 2012 in the summer. I go to university, and obviously keeping in mind that I've been working so many years to get to this point, I've gone through rejections and failures, and I've still, clawed my way back in. And my first year was pretty good. I loved the theory that I had to learn, and at this stage we had a few placements, but we weren't in hospital most of the time. So I get through the first year, and then the second year starts to get a little bit more difficult. And when I say difficult, I don't mean in terms of the knowledge. I passed every single exam. I could keep up with the theory and the practicals and all of it. It wasn't that that was too hard for me. The work wasn't too hard. It was just that the people were too hard. Over the years, I came to realize that I just really didn't enjoy the level of toxicity and the level of competition and the level of actually, like, quite frankly, bullying that went on in the medical field. That's not to say everyone is like that. There are some absolutely amazing doctors, nurses, but there are also so many people that kind of get off on making you feel super belittled, and they get off on bullying. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because they had to go through it. Maybe they feel like that's the way that doctors need to be in order to teach other doctors. Maybe they're just stressed out. Maybe they hate their lives. I don't know. But what it meant was that it created such a hostile environment sometimes. And I never found myself for a single second going to sleep on a Sunday night and not dreading Monday morning. I always dread Monday morning. Now, that might be because I'm a more sensitive person, and some people definitely don't feel that way. Obviously, we're all different humans. Everyone has different experiences and emotions, but it is something that I think a lot of people have vocalized, and a lot of medical students have vocalized in the past. And it just doesn't stop, I remember a time when I was in my 4th year of medical school and I was shadowing a senior doctor, and he was in a clinic with a consultant and they were looking at an x-ray, and the consultant was asking him a question. And this is like a grown man answering the question. He must have been like 40, 45, something like that. And he answered the question with hesitation, and the consultant just ripped him to shreds. He was so condescending, so rude, so belittling. And I thought to myself, at this grown age, at 40, 45 years old, I'm still gonna have to go through this. I knew I really wanted to help people. Learning about the human body, learning about disease and treatment, all of that I love. But I did not love being bullied. By this point, it was like my 4th year, and it was actually around my 3rd year that I started realizing that maybe this wasn't for me. My mental health dipped really badly. I dipped into depression. I had really bad anxiety, and I was just really starting to struggle a lot. And it wasn't wasn't really that I couldn't make it through the 5 years. It wasn't like I didn't have the resilience. It was more so that I felt like this was going to be the rest of my life. I could not see an end to it. I could see foundation doctors, senior doctors, consultants that were still being treated this way. And for a career that's supposed to heal people, I felt like it was doing the exact opposite to me and to many others. So by this point, I had spent a lot of time thinking about, do I really want to stay in this career, and should I persevere or should I just leave? And it was only thanks to my sister, who basically was my therapist throughout that whole time, and she essentially forced me to stay in until I got the degree. She was like, keep going, just get the degree and then you can take it from there. So I mustered up all my strength and courage to just make it till the 5th year, pass every exam, and then get my degree, graduate, and then take it from there. Usually what happens is that medical students, after they graduate, they go on to do something called foundation training. Most people do those 2 foundation years because it means that you're properly registered as a doctor, and it's much easier to come back and work as a doctor in the UK. And most people who decide to drop out of medicine usually do so after those 2 years, or they do so within medical school. What I did was something completely different, and I essentially decided to take a break right after medical school, which is really uncommon to do. Very few people take it before they've even started working in the hospital as a full-time doctor. So you can imagine a lot of people at this stage were saying to me, come on, like, just make it through to the next 2 years. And I'm like, I can't. I've already spent 5 years just saying, just another year, just another year, just another year. And now you want me to do another 2 years. And I promise you, once I get to those 2 years, I'm probably going to feel like, oh, just another 3 years. Let me just specialize. Let me just do this. And it was such a conveyor belt of a career. And it was one that I pretty much hated every second of. I couldn't fathom the thought of just another year for basically the rest of my life. So I tried to be sensible about it. I went to my careers advisor. Absolutely not helpful at all. She gave me like information on what people do outside of medicine if they're not doctors, and it was like management, consulting, I don't even know what else. It was just like these 4 or 5 things that didn't speak to me at all, and I did not want to do. So she wasn't helpful. My friends weren't so helpful because most of them were medical students and they couldn't really understand why I would want to leave at that time. A lot of them were supportive and they were like, hey, if this isn't for you, then that's fine. But I'm pretty sure most of them were thinking like, what the hell, just wait those extra 2 years. My family also wanted me to push through. They were super supportive and loving, but they also just had not been in that position. I basically could not find anyone who had gone through what I'd gone through. So I had to make the decision by myself, and it was such a difficult decision to make because by that point, my identity had been so heavily tied to being a medical student and becoming a doctor that I did not know who I was or what I liked outside of that. Regardless, I knew that I needed to take a break for my mental health, and I could not envision a life that I would have loved had I stayed in that career path. At the time, I was working for free remotely for a health tech startup that was based in Berlin. And I thought to myself, go big or go home. If I'm gonna leave, I might as well do something like super crazy and just go for it. Because I was thinking to myself, let me just take 1 year out and reapply to F1. By the way, I had already had a position as a doctor lined up, so I was accepted into a role as a doctor. But I deferred it and I wanted to wait another year just to see and experience something outside of what I knew and see if that was something that I preferred more. So I went to Berlin and I met the people who run the startup, and I asked them, hey, do you have a full-time position for me by any chance? And luckily they said yes. So I did what I thought at the time was the unthinkable thing to do. I moved by myself to Berlin in Germany, where I knew absolutely no one. I didn't know a lick of German. I just thought to myself, why the hell not? Let me just do it. Pretty much within the first month, I knew within my soul that I had made the right decision, because I would go to sleep every night and be absolutely ecstatic about going to work the next morning. And I truly did not think I could ever feel that way, because up until this point, all I had felt was dread and anxiety. And to have that feeling, I will never forget. And I know that I never want to go back to having that feeling of dread and anxiety. So I stayed in Berlin, and after a year of having such a great time, not just at work, but also meeting new people, experiencing a new culture, a new language, I had such a good time. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to reapply for F1 again, just to make sure that I'm making the right decision for myself. So I reapplied and I got another job as a doctor in Wrexham, Wales, and my best friend was literally working in that city at that time. So if I wanted to go back, this would have been an opportune moment to do so. And as it came up to me leaving Berlin and going back to work as a doctor in the UK, every fiber of my being was telling me, this is the wrong decision for you. I didn't feel a single shred of excitement. All I felt was dread and anxiety. So again, for the second time, I rejected my offer to be a F1 doctor and I decided to stay in Berlin for another year. And I had researched and I knew by this point, if you had graduated and it's been 2 years since your graduation, that it's still relatively easy for you to retrain and come back. But after 2 years, it gets more difficult. So at the 2-year mark, I had a really tough decision to make. I had to ask myself, do I ever see myself working as a doctor again? I had left all the roads open for me so that if I ever did change my mind, I could go back. But by the 2-year mark, I just knew I could never go back. So I stayed in Berlin. Things at that startup got a little bit toxic. So I ended up leaving and then I learned about social entrepreneurship and I started my own business and the rest is history. Since then, I've been an entrepreneur, mainly working on building social enterprises. And even though my core mission in life is still the same of wanting to help people with the work that I do, I could not have taken more of a different route. But I also didn't know that being here would make me the happiest I've ever been in my life. I love my career. I've never found more sense of purpose than I have with what I do. And I'm so thankful that I made the incredibly difficult decision to just walk away when my gut and my instinct told me to walk away. And that's the main point of the story, is to tell you that if you are feeling stuck in any way in your career or life, and you feel like your gut is telling you you need to walk away, I really urge you to try and listen to that. The type of anxiety that you feel, that you just feel like, God, all I feel is misery. I just feel miserable. So I really want to encourage you to just do what feels true to you. Because had I stayed in medicine, because everyone had told me to basically stay, I'm pretty darn sure that I would be absolutely miserable right now. And by the way, this is not to encourage anyone to leave medicine. It's just sharing my story and how I felt. If you want to hear more about my story, in particular my story with entrepreneurship, then you can watch this video. And if you enjoyed this video, you want to see me again in the next one, then please subscribe and I hope to catch you in the next video. Bye!